D'Angelo was more than a singer, he was a force. With just 3 studio albums, he rewrote the rules of R&B, giving birth to a movement that came to be known as neo-soul. He carried the torch of legends like Marvin Gaye and Prince while pushing the sound into a new generation. His music wasn't just heard, it was felt. But while his art soared, his personal life often told a different story. For decades, D'Angelo wrestled with fame, pressure, addiction, and the weight of expectations. And in his final years, as health struggles mounted and tragedy struck close to home, the man who once seemed untouchable retreated further into silence. By the time of his passing in October 2025, D'Angelo had become one of music's greatest enigmas, an artist who gave the world timeless masterpieces but left behind unanswered questions. What secrets did his silence hold? What music lies unreleased in his vault? And how will history remember a man whose final years were as mysterious as his rise was meteoric? This is the untold story of D'Angelo's final years, the silence, the struggles, and the soul he left behind. To understand the silence, you first have to remember the sound. In 1995, D'Angelo exploded onto the scene with Brown Sugar. At a time when R&B was dominated by polished groups and pop-leaning hits, his sound was raw, gritty, and rooted in tradition. With live instrumentation and a voice that dripped with church-born soul, D'Angelo reminded listeners of the past while sounding like the future. Songs like Brown Sugar, Lady, and Cruisin' made him a star, but more importantly, they set him apart. He wasn't chasing trends, he was redefining them. Critics hailed him as the new Marvin Gaye, but even that comparison didn't capture his uniqueness. He wasn't simply reviving soul, he was birthing neo-soul, a genre that would inspire artists like Erykah Badu, Maxwell, Jill Scott, and Alicia Keys. Then came 2000's Voodoo. It was darker, funkier, and more experimental. Tracks like Devil's Pie and Untitled, How Does It Feel, pushed boundaries. The latter, with its now iconic video of a shirtless D'Angelo staring into the camera, cemented him as both a musical genius and an unexpected sex symbol. The album won him 2 Grammys, including Best R&B Album. But success came with a cost. The pressure to live up to the title of Savior of Soul weighed heavily. That music video, celebrated by fans, became a burden for D'Angelo himself, who felt objectified and trapped by an image he hadn't chosen. Behind the critical acclaim was a man beginning to unravel under the weight of his own legend. And soon, silence replaced the music. After Voodoo, D'Angelo stepped away from the spotlight. What was supposed to be a brief break turned into over a decade of absence. For fans, it was agonizing. For D'Angelo, it was survival. The years after 2000 were filled with battles. He wrestled with substance abuse, weight gain, and arrests that tarnished his carefully crafted image. In 2005, he survived a near-fatal car accident while driving under the influence, a wake-up call that nearly ended his life. The accident left him physically broken and emotionally shaken, forcing him to confront the fragility of both his career and his health. But perhaps the greatest battle was with fame itself. D'Angelo never craved celebrity. He wanted to make music, not become a sex symbol or a tabloid story. The fame that fans assumed was a gift often felt like a curse. To escape, he retreated. For years, he avoided interviews, appearances, and even recording sessions. During this time, rumors swirled. Fans speculated about unreleased albums, about industry pressure keeping him hidden, about whether he'd ever return at all. His absence only deepened his mystique. And while silence shielded him, it also left a question hanging in the air. Was the genius gone for good? In 2014, after nearly 15 years of absence, D'Angelo shocked the world with Black Messiah. The release was sudden, almost secretive, dropping without fanfare in December, and it felt like a cultural earthquake. Black Messiah wasn't just an album, it was a statement. With themes of injustice, politics, and spirituality, it arrived at a time when America was facing protests and civil unrest. The album spoke to the moment, and fans hailed it as a masterpiece. Critics compared it to Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. It proved that D'Angelo still had the fire, and that his silence hadn't diminished his artistry. The comeback wasn't just in the studio. He toured, performed at festivals, and reconnected with audiences. But even during this period, there was a sense that he was holding back. He rarely gave interviews. He remained elusive, avoiding the kind of media presence that could have reignited his celebrity. In 2024, he surprised fans again with a collaboration with Jay-Z on the soundtrack for The Book of Clarence. It was a reminder that he was still capable of brilliance, even as whispers about his health and absence grew louder. For fans, it was hope, a sign that perhaps a 4th album was coming, but behind the music, the silence was creeping back.
And you went on a date, right? We went on a little date. Tell me, what would I expect from Mr. D'Angelo?
Romance.
In early 2025, tragedy hit close to home. Angie Stone, a celebrated singer in her own right, and the mother of D'Angelo's son, died in a sudden car accident. Their relationship had been complicated, full of highs and lows, but they shared a bond that time could never erase. Her death shook D'Angelo deeply. Sources close to him said he was overwhelmed by grief, struggling to process the loss. For a man already prone to withdrawal, the tragedy pushed him further into isolation. Fans noticed his absence from the public eye and wondered why. What they didn't know was that D'Angelo was mourning not only a partner from his past, but also a piece of his own history. Angie Stone's death wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. Together they represented a moment in R&B when soul felt unstoppable. Losing her was like losing a chapter of his own life story, and it weighed on him in ways only those closest could see. By 2025, whispers about D'Angelo's health grew louder. He had been battling pancreatic cancer, a fight kept largely private until the very end. For months, he was hospitalized, and in his final weeks, he entered hospice care. Fans noticed his absence, but few understood how serious it was. The man who once commanded stages with raw energy was now fighting a battle out of sight. His health struggles were compounded by his lifelong battle with fame and expectations. He was never comfortable in the spotlight, and in his final years, he retreated from it almost completely. Behind the silence was a man at war with his body, his legacy, and the world's expectations of him. When D'Angelo died on October 14, 2025, at just 51 years old, fans were left mourning not just the man, but the music he never had the chance to release. Insiders say he left behind unfinished songs, demos, and recordings stored away in a vault. The question now is, will the world ever hear them? Rumors of a fourth album had circulated for years. Producers who worked with him claimed there were sketches of tracks that could rival anything he had released before. Some believe there's enough material for a posthumous project. Others think the music will remain hidden, locked away like so much of D'Angelo's personal life. The mystery fuels the legend. Just as silence defined much of his career, it also defines his legacy. Fans are left to wonder whether the vault holds one final masterpiece or whether his silence will remain unbroken. On the day of his passing, tributes poured in from across the music world. Artists like Questlove, Maxwell, and Erykah Badu remembered him not only as a peer, but as a pioneer. Fans flooded social media with memories of how his music changed their lives. D'Angelo's story is bittersweet. 3 albums, Brown Sugar, Voodoo, and Black Messiah, and yet those 3 alone secured his place as one of the most important artists of his generation. His influence can be heard in modern R&B and soul revivalists, and even in hip-hop. He didn't need a massive discography. His impact was enough. But his silence leaves questions. What could he have made if he'd been given more time? What music lies hidden in the vault? What stories will never be told? D'Angelo's final years were marked by secrets, health struggles, and silence. But his legacy is louder than ever. His voice, his artistry, and his spirit live on in every note he recorded. And as fans reflect on his life, one haunting truth remains. Sometimes, the greatest stories are the ones left unfinished.